glittering glasses, forced smiles and an elaborate dining table. My husband David raised his champagne glass, his cold gaze meeting mine for a fleeting moment before sweeping across the room. To the family and friends gathered this Thanksgiving Day. And especially, to a new beginning. Without you, of course. Absolute silence. Every eye turned toward me. Some looked confused, others horrified. David's mom covered her mouth with her napkin. My sister Samantha squeezed my hand under the table. But I didn't cry. I didn't run off. I just smiled and raised my own glass. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. I'm ready. The shock on his face was worth every second of the 3 months of preparation. David had no idea that I already knew everything. It all started on an ordinary morning, 90 days ago. David forgot his phone when he went out for a run. When the phone vibrated insistently, I picked it up to see if it was important. A text message lit up the screen. Divorce papers are ready. I managed to hide the investments in the Cayman Islands. She won't see a dime. 15 years of marriage. 15 years of helping him build his law career, while I put my art dreams on hold. And he planned to leave me with nothing. That very day, I hired Barbara, a lawyer who specialized in complicated divorces. Her office overlooked the Charles River, and her expression was as sharp as her impeccable suit. He thinks you don't know anything. That's perfect. We've got the element of surprise. Barbara was furiously typing on her laptop. We need evidence. Photos, documents, bank statements. Anything that shows he's hiding money. How am I going to get that? He keeps everything locked up. I know someone. Barbara slid a card across the table. Linda Hayes, a private investigator. Discreet and efficient. Linda was exactly how I imagined an investigator would be, observant, meticulous, and with a knack for going unnoticed. In 2 weeks, she handed over a complete dossier. Your husband transferred significant amounts to offshore accounts. I also discovered a mortgage he put on the house without your knowledge. Forged signature. Linda pointed at a document. And there's more. He's been consulting doctors about his emotional instability since last year's miscarriage. I felt the blood go cold in my veins. David was fabricating a false medical history to hurt me in court. The same man who had comforted me through nights of tears was now using that pain as a weapon. He's playing dirty, I commented. That's usually how it goes, Linda replied. But now we have evidence. While David continued living his life, I was quietly building my defense. Barbara prepared legal petitions. Linda documented every suspicious financial transaction. And I kept up the role of the perfect wife, smiling at business dinners, managing our Beacon Hill home. The surprise came from the least expected source. Amanda, David's sister, approached me after a family lunch. I need to show you something, she said, nervously glancing over her shoulder as we parked at a quiet cafe. Amanda slid an envelope across the table. I found this on his computer when I was printing some documents for Mom. David is planning to speed up the divorce to before New Year's. There's a detailed timeline. Why are you helping me? I asked, incredulous. Because what he's doing is wrong. And because you've always been more family to me than he ever was. Her eyes filled with tears. He did the same with our father's mom. History repeating itself. With Amanda's information, Barbara secured an emergency hearing. On the morning before Thanksgiving, we walked into court for a temporary injunction. Your Honor, Barbara argued, Mr. Thompson is actively hiding marital assets and planning to leave my client destitute after 15 years of marriage. The judge studied the documents, his eyebrows raising in disapproval. Order to freeze all marital assets granted, effective immediately. No bank transfers, property sales, or any financial moves until further notice. In just 3 months, I had turned David's game against him. So when he raised his glass at Thanksgiving dinner, announcing our end with such cruelty, I wasn't just ready. I was 2 steps ahead. 2 days after the disaster at Thanksgiving dinner, I found myself outside the Newbury Street Gallery, one of Boston's most prestigious art spaces. I took a deep breath before pushing open the glass door, feeling the weight of my portfolio under my arm. 15 years ago, I had been a promising artist with a fine arts degree and dreams of exhibiting in places just like this. Then I met David, and gradually my talent was reduced to a hobby, a way to fill the time between charity dinners and office receptions. The gallery's interior was exactly as I had imagined: pristine white walls, strategic lighting, and a respectful silence that made every click of my heels on the polished wood floor seem louder. An elegant gray-haired woman approached with an outstretched hand. "Mrs. Thompson. I'm Elizabeth Carter. I loved the initial work you emailed me." I shook her hand, fighting the feeling of being an imposter. "Thank you for the opportunity. I know the assistant curator position is competitive. We have many candidates, yes, but few with your eye for composition." Elizabeth led me to her back office. "Tell me, why return to the art world now, after so long?" I chose my words carefully. "Let's just say I'm rediscovering parts of me that have been asleep for too long." The interview flowed naturally. We talked about art movements, contemporary trends, and my ideas for themed exhibitions. Elizabeth seemed genuinely impressed when I showed her the original pieces from my portfolio, paintings I had secretly created over the past few months, channeling all my anguish into vibrant colors and bold brushstrokes. "I have to admit, I didn't expect such artistic maturity," Elizabeth commented, examining one particularly expressive canvas. "There's emotional depth here." Pain turned into beauty. At the end of the interview, Elizabeth walked me to the door. "I'll be in touch in a few days, but I must say I'm inclined to." She stopped suddenly, looking over my shoulder. I turned to see David entering the gallery, impeccable in his expensive suit, a calculated smile on his face. My stomach dropped. "Oh, what a coincidence to see you both," he said, as if it were just chance. "Elizabeth, I didn't know you knew my wife." "David," Elizabeth replied coolly. "I wasn't expecting to see you today. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by to talk about that donation the office is considering for the gallery's educational program." His gaze slid to my portfolio. "I see that Megan showed your work." The way he pronounced that last word made my blood boil. "Actually, we're very impressed," Elizabeth replied before I could speak. "Really?" David laughed softly. "I have to admit, I was surprised when I heard she was job hunting. Megan's been struggling with some emotional issues recently. I'm not sure now is the right time for her to take on professional responsibilities." I felt my cheeks heat up. "David. And as for the artwork," he continued as if I weren't there, "I have some doubts about its authenticity. Megan has always been more of a fan than a creator." Elizabeth looked from David to me, clearly uncomfortable. "Mr. Thompson, I appreciate your concern, but I judge my candidates based on what I see in front of me, not on third-party opinions." Her voice was polite yet firm. David kept smiling, though his eyes hardened. Sure. I just thought you'd like to have all the information before making a decision. As a friend of the gallery." When he finally left, my hands trembled with anger. "Elizabeth, I'm sorry about that. We're going through a messy divorce." "No need to explain." Elizabeth gently squeezed my arm. "I know men like your husband. They try to control everything and everyone around them. That night, I called Barbara, feeling defeated. He's trying to sabotage me in every aspect of my life. I've probably lost the opportunity at the gallery. Don't jump to conclusions, Barbara replied. We're speaking to the judge tomorrow about his behavior. And I have some news that might finally put him on the defensive. The next morning, I met Barbara and Linda at a cafe near the courthouse. Linda shoved a folder toward me. I found something disturbing, she said softly. David took out a life insurance policy in his name 6 months ago. $5 million. And that's bad? I asked. You're not the direct beneficiary, Barbara explained. It's a newly created foundation he controls. And the policy has some unusual clauses, including coverage for accident or suicide. The coffee in my cup suddenly tasted like ice. You're suggesting that he... We're not jumping to conclusions, Linda interrupted. But considering the secret divorce plan and the attempts to paint you as emotionally unstable. That changes everything, Barbara declared, closing her laptop. We're going to request immediate judicial protection. 2 hours later, we were facing the same judge who had frozen our assets. Your Honor, Barbara argued, new evidence suggests that Mr. Thompson's actions go beyond just hiding assets. He is actively trying to ruin my client's professional recovery, and, even more concerning, he took out an insurance policy that raises serious questions about his intentions. David's lawyer, a burly gray-haired man named Stanley, protested vehemently. This is absurd. My client is simply planning his financial future, like any responsible person. Mrs. Thompson is building conspiracy theories out of hurt feelings. The judge examined the documents in silence before looking up. Mr. Peterson, your explanation for a $5 million life insurance policy that indirectly benefits your client, taken out secretly 6 months ago, is problematic, especially considering the documented efforts to portray Mrs. Thompson as emotionally unstable. At that moment, my phone vibrated. A text from Elizabeth Carter read, "The job is yours. Start on Monday. P.S. Your husband just lost a significant donation for our gallery." I smiled, feeling the first real glimmer of hope in months. The judge continued, "I am issuing a temporary restraining order. Mr. Thompson must keep his distance from Mrs. Thompson, and is not allowed any contact with her current or future employers. I am also ordering a complete review of all marital assets by an independent forensic accountant." As we left the courthouse, Barbara squeezed my shoulder. First major victory. And there's more to come. Do you think he really... I couldn't finish the sentence. We don't know for sure, Linda replied honestly. But now he knows we're on to him. On Monday, I walked into the Newbury Street Gallery as the assistant curator. The space that once intimidated me now felt welcoming and full of possibilities. Elizabeth introduced me to the team, and showed me my small office, with a view of the street. Your first project will be helping curate the spring exhibition, she explained. Theme, personal rebirth. I thought it was fitting given the circumstances. It's perfect, I replied, feeling unexpected tears well up. I hadn't cried since discovering David's plans, keeping my emotions strictly under control. But this moment, the rediscovery of my passion, the recognition of my talent, broke something inside me. Elizabeth discreetly handed me a tissue. I know what it's like to rebuild your life from scratch. I did it at 50, after my ex-husband ran off with our savings and his secretary. I thought I'd never find my way again. Now I run one of the most respected galleries in Boston. How did you do it? One day at a time. Surround yourself with people who believe in you. And, she smiled, channel all that anger into something productive. That afternoon, while I was organizing catalogs of emerging artists, I received a call from Barbara. The forensic accountant has already found 3 offshore accounts that David didn't declare. And the judge just granted provisional alimony. It's not the ideal amount, but it will keep you stable during the process. A wave of relief washed over me. That means... It means you don't have to worry about the bills while you restart your career. David tried to leave you with nothing, but now he's legally obligated to support you until the final division of assets. I looked out the window of my new office, watching people pass on the sidewalk below, each with their own story, their own hidden struggles. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't just David Thompson's wife. I was Megan, an artist, a curator, a survivor. The person I was meant to be all along. The morning of the final hearing arrived with the first significant snowfall of winter. Delicate snowflakes danced in the air as I climbed the courthouse steps, with Barbara at my side and a folder clutched tightly against her chest. "Ready?" she asked, pausing before the double wooden doors. More than ever. The courthouse interior was imposing, with dark oak panels and flags flanking the judge's bench. David was already there, quietly talking with Stanley. When I walked in, he gave me a look meant to be intimidating. 3 months ago, that look would have made me shrink back. Today, I held his gaze until he looked away first. Small victories. Judge Wilson entered and everyone stood. In his 60s, with white hair and a stern expression, he exuded unwavering authority. Over the past few weeks, he had presided over our preliminary hearings with firm impartiality, showing little tolerance for stalling tactics. "Good morning, everyone," he began, adjusting his glasses. "We are here to determine the provisional agreements in the Thompson versus Thompson case, pending the final divorce trial. I understand there are urgent issues regarding financial support and access to joint property." Barbara stood first. "Your Honor, as we demonstrated in previous hearings, Mr. Thompson systematically tried to hide marital assets and deprive my client of the financial resources she is legally entitled to. The forensic accountant's report confirmed the existence of multiple undeclared accounts and offshore investments." Stanley interrupted, abruptly standing. "Your Honor, my client insists that any discrepancies in the financial records were due to standard business practices and not deliberate attempts to hide assets." The judge flipped through some documents. "Mr. Peterson, the forensic report pinpoints bank transfers made exactly 3 days after your client first consulted a divorce lawyer. That hardly seems like a coincidence." A slight blush crept up on Stanley's neck. The judge continued, "Furthermore, I am particularly concerned about the documented attempts by Mr. Thompson to interfere with Mrs. Thompson's employment opportunities, as well as the issue of the undisclosed insurance policy." David leaned forward, whispering something to Stanley, who nodded and stood again. "Your Honor, any interaction my client may have had with Mrs. Thompson's employer was motivated solely by genuine concern. As for the insurance policy, it is simply part of the normal financial planning of a successful lawyer. A financial plan that curiously coincided with medical consultations intended to document the wife's supposed emotional instability." Judge Wilson removed his glasses, deliberately cleaning them. "Mr. Peterson, let's be frank. The evidence suggests a pattern of calculated behavior intended to put Mrs. Thompson at a significant disadvantage after 15 years of marriage." I felt a wave of validation wash over me. So many sleepless nights, wondering if I was overreacting or misinterpreting David's actions. Hearing a judge articulate exactly what I had been feeling was like finally being able to breathe after holding my breath for months. With that in mind, the judge continued, "I am ruling as follows. Mr. Thompson will provide monthly financial support in the amount of $12,000 during the divorce proceedings. Mrs. Thompson will have immediate access to the joint account for personal expenses. The asset freeze remains in place for all other assets until the final resolution. I looked at Barbara, who nodded discreetly. It was more than we had hoped for. Additionally, the judge continued, the restraining order remains in effect. Mr. Thompson must avoid any contact with Mrs. Thompson except through legal representatives, and he must not interfere in any way with her current or future employment. I saw David's jaw tense, that familiar little twitch that signaled held back anger. Stanley put a hand on his arm, presumably to keep him calm. One last matter, the judge said while flipping through more documents. Regarding the primary residence, I understand both parties are claiming priority. David had been fighting fiercely to force me out of the house, arguing that the property was mostly the result of his own work. Barbara stood up. Your Honor, Mrs. Thompson is willing to temporarily give up the primary residence if she is adequately compensated with alternative housing. She has found a suitable apartment not far from her new job. That surprised me. I hadn't even discussed that, but I quickly understood Barbara's strategy. The house, although beautiful, was filled with memories I wanted to leave behind. A new space really would symbolize a fresh start. The judge nodded. That seems reasonable. Mr. Thompson will cover the deposit and rent for Mrs. Thompson's new apartment in addition to the financial support already determined. After the hearing, I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. David and Stanley left quickly without looking back, while Barbara and I gathered our documents. That was brilliant, I murmured to her. The part about the house. Barbara smiled. Sometimes you have to give in on one thing to win another. Besides, I noticed how you've been looking at that house lately, like it's a cage, not a home. Snow was still falling as we left the courthouse. Large flakes now, creating a magical silence that softened the sounds of the city. Barbara said goodbye with a firm hug, promising to call later about the next steps. I stood alone on the courthouse steps, watching the snow transform Boston into a winter postcard. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a text from David. This isn't over. You'll never be able to support yourself. You'll be begging to come back. 15 years ago, those words would have devastated me. Today, they only brought a tired sigh. With determined fingers, I typed my reply. I'm ready for a new beginning. Without you. I blocked his number and put my phone away, feeling an odd sense of closure. 3 weeks later, I hung the last painting in my new apartment in Back Bay. It was smaller than the mansion in Beacon Hill, but every square inch was mine. Tall windows let in plenty of natural light, perfect for my little art studio in the corner of the room. The Personal Rebirth exhibition at the Newbury Street Gallery was coming together beautifully. Elizabeth had given me a lot of creative freedom, and I had selected artists whose work reflected transformation and self-discovery. At Elizabeth's insistence, I even included 3 of my own pieces under a pseudonym. Your work belongs here, she had said firmly when I tried to protest. The story behind it adds depth to the exhibition. The phone rang, Samantha calling to confirm our dinner. How's the new apartment? She asked after our initial greetings. Almost done. Just a few boxes left. And how are you? Really? I paused, considering her question. I'm still processing everything. There are tough days when I doubt myself. But most of the time, I'm fine. Better than I expected. Proud of you, sis, Samantha said, her voice full of emotion. Not everyone can face what you went through and come out stronger. After we hung up, I walked to the window. The sun was beginning to set, painting the Boston sky in shades of pink and orange. Down below, people were hurrying home after a long day at work, and lights were coming on in nearby buildings, each lit window representing another life, another story. Winter was still holding on outside, but inside my apartment, it already felt like spring. My phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Amanda, David's sister. "Megan, I heard the hearing went well. David is furious, which probably means it was fair. I wanted you to know that Mom asked about you. She misses you at family dinners. Actually, we all do. Except you know who, of course. If you're ready someday, we'd love to see you again. No pressure. Love, Amanda." I smiled at the phone. Family isn't always about sharing the same blood, but about those who stick by you when the world falls apart. My life had been redefined in ways I never imagined. From being the perfect wife of an ambitious lawyer, I had transformed into an independent woman, an art curator, an artist in my own right. The divorce process would drag on for months, maybe even years. There would be more battles ahead, more of David's attempts to belittle me. But the control he once had over me, that insidious influence that crept in so gradually I hardly noticed until it was nearly complete, was broken. At my desk, a blank canvas waited. Tomorrow, I would start a new painting. Something bright and hopeful, perhaps. A piece about new beginnings. I picked up my journal and wrote the date at the top of a fresh page. Today marks 4 months since I found David's text messages, I wrote. 4 months since I discovered that the man I married was planning to leave me destitute, after 15 years together. I should be devastated. Maybe part of me is. But another part, a part that had been asleep for too long, is grateful for the brutal awakening. I paused, considering my next words. Because sometimes you have to lose everything you thought was important to discover who you really are. Sometimes an ending isn't really an ending, but the start of something much truer. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. I closed the journal and watched the snowflakes dance under the streetlights. They fell gently, covering the city with a pure white blanket, erasing old footprints, creating a blank canvas. A new beginning. And this time, on my own terms.